From my years of working as a developer, I've had to work with a lot of different designers in different companies. And in this video, I'm going to go through a few things, in my opinion, that separate good designers from okay ones. The first thing that makes a good product designer is that they think about most of the possible outcomes. Of course, you can't think about all the possible outcomes that a design may have, but if you can get the main ones out of the way, then that is really useful. So let me give you an example. This is a design I made a long time ago, and imagine I had given this design to a product owner, product manager, and I said, this is it, the design for the whole website is done. Now, the design itself isn't that bad, it just hasn't covered a few scenarios. So let's say the user that visits this site is on a slow connection. What does that look like? Is there a loading spinner over the whole site? Is there some kind of skeleton loading? Are certain aspects loaded in at a certain time? Let's say there's some kind of network error. What does that look like? Where will that error be displayed on the page? And of course, I could go on talking about other aspects, but these are the main things that a good designer will think about and that designers that aren't so good won't think about. The second point is design for the user's need, not for the developer's limits. So in my years of working as a developer, I'm often in this scenario where a designer will come up to me, show me a mock-up or a design, and ask me if certain features of that design will work technically. The assumption being, if they won't work technically, then the feature will come out. And I always give them the same answer. Think about the user's needs, not about the technical limits. This is not to say that designers should not involve developers early in the design process. I think that's really important, but I think it's even more important to put the user first and not think about technical limits. Staying on the topic of design, if you are a designer or developer who has always wanted to make your own video game, why not check out my course where I show you how to use a really easy game engine called Hacks Flixel to make a really simple platform game. Back to the design points. The third point is don't make others assume what the design will look like. So going back to this design example I gave earlier, imagine if I had been given a brief to create a design for desktop, mobile and tablet, and I had given the developers and product owners this design and said, it's complete. If they then come up to me and ask me, how will this look like on mobile? And I say, oh, it would be single column and the left side would go on top of the right side. The person working on this would have to assume how it would look. And that's not good because they could do something the designer didn't plan for in their head. That would cause a lot of communication and rework. This issue could be fixed by creating another design for mobile or having really good documentation. Moving on to the fourth point, own up when you have missed something out. So we're all human, we all make mistakes, and it's not uncommon for a designer to make a mistake and design something that hasn't been well thought out or hasn't included the user's needs very well. The best thing to do, in my opinion, for that designer is to put their hands up and say, okay, I've made a mistake, I'm going to go and do that again. And in my experience, some designers don't do that. They kind of argue with the developers, shift blame elsewhere. And if you're a good designer, it shows when you own up to mistakes and go ahead and make revisions to problems in the design. The fifth point is to consider accessibility. And this is something that I've seen a lot of designers omit. So if I show you this image, you can see that each kind of button has an outline around it or a border. And this is very important for people who are navigating with a keyboard or who are visually impaired. This is a way for them to know what button is highlighted. And it looks different in different browsers. So as you can see in the image, Edge is on the left, Firefox is in the middle, and Chrome is on the right. And each outline has a different design. In my opinion, I think they should be kept or be designed differently. They shouldn't be removed. And a good designer would know that. They wouldn't remove them for the sake of the look of the design. They keep them in for accessibility reasons. Similarly, it's important to think about how color contrast works in a design to make it easier for people to read, especially people who are older who find it difficult to read text. And this is a good site to see what color ratios work. It's called colorratio.com if you want to check it out. And in my experience, unfortunately, I've seen designers who have given me text colors that will be unreadable for people who have problems with their eyes or who are older. And it's not something a good designer would do. A good designer will know these accessibility things and implement them ahead of time. There are, of course, more examples I can give when it comes to accessibility, but I will leave it here for now. The sixth point is to look over your developer's shoulder. Now, one thing a developer loves from designers is for them to look over their shoulders while they're coding to make sure that the designs are correct, especially when the developer is like this and wearing headphones. They love nothing more than for a designer to look over their shoulder and tell them if they're making a mistake with the design, if something needs to be moved to the left or to the right, or if a color is slightly incorrect, then you go ahead and tell them that they're making a mistake. Seventh point, ask for feedback early and often. And I think this is one of the most important points. It's always important when you have finished a stage of design to speak to developers, product owners, and people who are involved with making decisions, maybe even the user, to see if the design is appropriate. And depending on what kind of company you're in, you might be able to hold focus groups or user experience sessions where you can show prototypes to the actual user and see if they behave in the way you expected. And I believe that feedback should happen all the time, even after the product has been released. You should get users in to use it and to see if they find it intuitive. So that's it. To recap, the first thing, think about most of the possible outcomes. The second thing, design for the user's need and not the developer's limit. Third, don't make others assume what designs will look like. Fourth, own up when you have missed something out. 5, consider accessibility. 6, look over your developer's shoulder. That is actually a joke point if you didn't get it the first time. Don't look over developers' shoulders, they find that quite annoying. And 7, ask for feedback early and often. I hope you found this talk useful. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more like this. Thanks for watching.